Hello and welcome to this episode of Church at Home. Father Ed Estak.
Father Michael.
Father Dominic.
And we are reflecting on the 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And in full transparency, I'm not going to be here for the 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time. So I'm only loosely interested in preparing a homily for next weekend. So, but these guys are going to be here in full swinging.
We'll do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, right. So we are impressed with the image of the prophet in the Old Testament and the New Testament and the Gospel text this week, and we're thinking about maybe defining what is prophetic action. And Father Dominic suggested something for our reflection.
Yeah, I was thinking about how in the scriptures we have Elisha, who is welcomed in by a good woman, and how that dynamic was a really fruitful dynamic to the point of her even bearing a child with her husband. So there's a sense of Christian community, and the fact that when Christians come together, we can grow closer to Christ and build each other up.
Mm-hmm. And it's fruitful. Yeah.
And it's right. It's fruitful. The community is fruitful. That togetherness is fruitful, and it's, I would say, essential as well. None of us is meant to walk alone. This journey, this life in the church, is not just me and Jesus. We do have a personal relationship with Jesus, but also with one another. Right? We're aiming for the communion of saints, not just to be with God, but to be with one another and all the saints. And that begins now. We begin practicing for that now, making ourselves ready for that now, building that kingdom, that communion up now. Even a monk or even a hermit is not really alone, because hermits will tend to live in a community of hermits, and every now and then they do come together and share resources and pray. And so no one in the Christian life is truly alone. It's all based on and essential to having a community.
Right. And as Catholics, we're really convinced of this, that this entering into faithful communion as a communion of the faithful, the Church calls it, is that it's then that God is most fruitful in our midst. And this Eucharistic revival year, I think we were preaching that there are 4 presences of Christ in the celebration of Mass. So that's the principal place where we gather together voluntarily in the communion of the faithful, and encountering Christ there, it bears fruit in our lives. So the Eucharist is, in a sense, the fruit of our Christian faith and common faith. And so one of the 4 presences of Christ in the Mass is, in fact, the gathering of the communion, and assembling of the faithful. So this is, and what I was impressed with is, so this notion of generously entering into communal love is a prophetic act, because a typical definition of a prophet is one who speaks on behalf of God, propheta. And so I think sometimes when we hear being prophetic, I have to be prophetic, I got to be talking like I am all the time. But obviously the Bible's trying to tell us that maybe the most effective prophetic thing that we can do on behalf of God is to love others, be generous in communion. Father Michael has a reflection on the back of the bulletin this week, in reflecting about next week. And so there's 2 maybe challenges with being prophetically active by building community and
right. So Jesus talks about receiving the prophet, and I think that posture of being receptive, receiving others, which is a necessary step to building community, often takes 2 forms. One is really easy and enjoyable. You could think of a child on Christmas morning who has been expecting something great all night and can't sleep and gets up excitedly in the morning and runs with reckless abandon to the tree and is excited to receive in that fashion. And you can juxtapose that with somebody who's in line at a shelter to get food, just this meal that they need, and there might be a lot of embarrassment or shame associated with that, but you got to eat. So the person's there in this profound posture of humility. And we also have to receive that way from one another and from God. So receiving kind of takes on these two postures of being excited and looking forward to what God and the community has to share with us and to offer us, but also being humble, approaching that with a sense of humility and just knowing it's not always all about me. Right? It's about all of us. It's about
Go figure.
community in a sense.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. Well, that'll certainly give us something to pray about as the next Sunday approaches, and I'll be praying for all of you from a slightly less stressful, intense place on vacation. So, all right. God bless.